Let's continue our conversation about planning. Because it's the planning season, it's autumn, and everybody's looking at budgeting for next year, making plans for the next year, both in your personal lives and for your organization, your team, your projects. Everybody's looking ahead as if this year was already over, but that's a different topic. So let's continue. Last week, I took you through forward versus backward planning. And if you haven't watched that video, you'll find a link up here, I think. Maybe it's up here. You know where to click. Before we dive in, hi, I'm Angelika. I'm a leadership coach with 15 years of project leadership experience. So I've been planning left, right, and center throughout my project management career. Let's talk about top-down versus bottom-up. Let's start with top-down, because I know my top-down people, it's the big picture, deductive thinkers. They won't have the patience to sit through the detailed bottom-up until we've gotten this out of the way. If you're a detailed bottom-up person, we're getting there, and I'm going to tell the top-down people not to ignore or neglect your approach, okay? We've already, with that remark, identified one of the biggest things that we're tackling or that we're challenged with when it comes to top-down versus bottom-up. People's brains work differently and people's approaches to planning are different. So depending on your thinking style, which you may have come across with an MBTI personality test or with your Clifton Strengths, so whatever other assessment you might have taken, depending on your thinking style, you prefer to either go big picture first, get top down, like what's the big headline, and then drill down to the details. What's the general outline or the goal for the year? And now let's figure out how we actually get that. The classic example for top-down is budgeting, where the company management executive team are coming out with, we have to make 20% more next year. And then, dear department heads, figure out how the heck you're gonna do that in your department. And then people are sitting there in their various departments thinking, oh my goodness, how can we ever make that happen? How did they come to this crazy idea of 20% more is even possible? And then we break it down and figure out, okay, how to chunk down those 20% more, whether it's revenue or profit, inside our own department. What can our contribution be? So that is classic top-down. We do that all the time, not just with company goals or with budgeting. We also do that when we look at a project timeline. If you break down, say, you're planning for a semester and you're looking at like the big chunks, like the big milestones first of when your exam appointments are, and then you figure out how you structure the details in between those exams. That's also top down. You first look at the big picture to get an overall idea, and then you drill down into the details. Let's look at bottom up planning. In a way, it is putting this on its head. If you start with a bottom-up plan, you start with all the details. What needs to be done, all the tasks, all the to-dos, all the elements of a situation. That can be numbers. It can be tasks if you're planning for a project. It can be people if you're looking at how many people you already have and how many you might need. And then you start extrapolating, and you do the individual details first, and then you build the categories, like clustering things. You also do that actually with your weekend grocery list or with your Saturday errands, because most people I know start with a brain dump of, I need to do this, and we need to get that, and we need to pick up that, etc., etc. And then you have this list of all the things you need to do, and then you take a second look at it, and then you start clustering. We can pick this up because the shoe repair shop is right next to the grocery store. We can do that right after we picked up and we did the grocery shopping. And then we should actually go somewhere else in order to do that second thing. So you build those categories after you've done all the details first. And coming up with a plan Going back to the example that I used in the top-down section, not sure if you watched that, if you're detail-oriented, and you might not have wanted to look at that, because some of you might think, top-down, that can't work, that's not solid. It's just bear with me. It's just a different style and a different sequence of doing things. So if you're a detail-oriented person and you start with the individual bits and bobs first, going back to that example of the budgeting, then you would work out from where you are today with the idea of making more profit or more sales or whatever deliverable you and your team are responsible for. How can you do that? Like, what additional project, what additional product, how much, which additional person, provider, which reduction in cost could you individually do? And then you would summarize that or cluster it and extrapolate it. So your sequence is coming from the detail and going to inductively going to the bigger picture of clusters, categories, phases. Same in a timeline. You would start by looking at what needs to be done, and then you would structure it out into bigger chunks, like this needs to be done first, and then the next thing needs to be done, or this is a different team that needs to run this and that in parallel. But you would look first at all the things that need to be done, and then come back to then you would come back to clusters and categories, right? Talking about clutter, I think that is one of the biggest prejudices that we are facing when we bring a detail-oriented or bottom-up person together with a big picture thinker. The big picture, top-down people, they are really quickly impatient with people who want to walk them through, this is where we're coming from, through the inductive way, because the top-down people are waiting for, what's the headline? What's the phase? What's the big goal? Will we actually get there? So there's a lot of impatience in between and a lot of misunderstanding, because the detail-oriented bottom-up people, they just want to be heard because they want to make sure that these beautiful, impatient, top-down people, that they actually get all the details that are involved in this. They want to make sure that we're not stuck with some kind of crazy, vague, should be possible, off-the-cuff plan or budget, because they want to make it solid, broken down, and that's why they go solid inductively. And if you look at this and if you listen to this, then it becomes obvious that we need both approaches, and that whether you're a top-down person and you're great at doing these headliners or the big chunks, big phases model first, whether you're talented with that and that is your process, you want to make sure that you validate your plan against the detailed approach. Otherwise, it will likely fail and you will figure out way too late, and then it gets costly. And on the other hand, if you're a detail-oriented bottom-up person who works inductively, then you want to make sure that you align with the bigger picture of your company goal, your personal vision, or whatever you're planning for. Because in the detailed elements, you may overlook that you come up with a fantastic plan for something that doesn't even take into account the vast potential of what you could reach. So take it less as I'm not going top down, that is vague. Or, I'm too impatient to go detailed, that's too much clutter. Just let that go and embrace both of the methods and just figure out what your personal preference or brain sequence is. Like, where do you naturally start? Do you start top down, or do you start with the details and work up towards categories, bigger chunks, the big plan? And embrace your own preference, because that is what you need as a leader. And remember that when you talk to other people, they may not think that your version of your plan or your version of your approach, the way you got to your plan, that is valid. And that is the biggest danger. So embrace not only your own preference, but also embrace that other people think differently and approach things differently. You want to make sure with any kind of solid plan that you validate a top-down plan with the details so that it becomes solid, and that you align your bottom-up plan with the bigger picture so that you're not cutting yourself short. So this is it for me for today. I hope this was helpful, and happy planning. See you next time. Bye.